back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked here on the channel. This is the series where I review every single book on my shelves because otherwise monsters will form from my misdeeds. Today we are talking about V.E. Schwab's Monsters of Verity series. Sidebar very quickly, I dyed my hair blue. This is not going to be the first video that features me having blue hair because of my upload schedule, but it is the first one I'm filming. I'm still figuring out the identity of having blue hair again. I haven't had blue hair in many, many years. Things might look weird. The lighting might be weird. I haven't figured out my makeup yet. We're working on it, okay? Quick disclaimers before we start. I bought both of these books myself. Nobody's paying me to talk about books and all opinions are my own. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible. There are some elements of the book that will minorly maybe be spoiled in what we're talking about. If you do want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, click away now. And lastly, I will link the story graph for the series below so you can check out any user-generated content warnings. Monsters of Verity is a YA dystopian paranormal duology consisting of two books. This Savage Song, which came out in 2016, and the sequel, Our Dark Duet, which came out in 2017. If you don't know who V.E. Schwab is, she's written a whole host of books. If you're new to the channel, I'm currently working through that section of my shelves, so we're going to talk about a lot of her books in the next few weeks. Subscribe if you haven't already. Kate Harker and August Flynn are the heirs to a divided city, a grisly metropolis where the violence has begun to create real and deadly monsters. All Kate wants is to be as ruthless as her father, who lets the monsters roam free and makes the inhabitants pay for his protection. August just wants to be human, as good-hearted as his own father, but his curse is to be what humans fear. The thin truce that keeps the Harker and Flynn families at peace is crumbling, and an assassination attempt forces Kate and August into a tenuous alliance. But how long will they survive in a city where no one is safe and the monsters are real? So conceptually, this is a very interesting book. I really like a lot of the world-building elements in there. I think what drew me to it initially, we're talking many, many years ago now at this point, was the idea of this world where monsters would come to life based on people's misdeeds. And I think we'll come on to kind of the negative aspect of that when we come to the negative aspects of the book. But for the most part, I think it creates a really interesting atmosphere for the book of kind of really capturing this city where bad things happen. And again, there's negatives to that, but I think in terms of the atmosphere generally across the two books, it is one of dread, it is one of concern. And there's an element to the second book that I think helps contrast that is missing in the first book. But for the most part, we really do get a sense of the danger of this place and of kind of the, I suppose, the real threat to people's lives that is constantly going on in Verity, the city. I think in that sense you really get V.E. Schwab's ability to create an overall setting. I think she's really good at setting the tone in her books, and I think that helps them feel different from one another, which we'll come on to as we move through this series somewhat. I am also a person who prefers V.E. Schwab's action books to her more philosophical isn't the right word, her more thought-based books, I suppose. So things like The Near Witch, which feels much more conceptual. This is still very conceptual, don't get me wrong, but there is a lot more action-y, fight scene-y kind of stuff going on. We are in a city where there are monsters and our characters are monster fighters and or monsters themselves. We're going to see some action. And I personally prefer that, so this book works really well for me. I think I do like it more than The Near Witch, having done a reread of both recently. I just think that the pacing helps. The way that you interact with characters is very different. I liked it more. That might not be your preference, but it was mine. And I think the other thing that really made me enjoy reading these books again now is they do have a nostalgic YA feel to them. They aren't completely cliche YA dystopian. Like, they aren't the Divergent books, for example, which hold a special place in my heart for probably all the wrong reasons, but they do evoke that kind of 2016 tipping point YA where people were trying to do different things with this sort of dystopian setting. I definitely still feel the elements of the old in there underneath the new. I think it's really interesting. At one point I would love to do a big video charting like the big YA books and the kind of rise and not necessarily fall, but the rise of different YA authors and subgenres and things. I think that would be really interesting. I do not currently have the time, and I'm sure someone else is already doing it. So if you're working on that video, please do let me know. But I think where this sits in that kind of changing YA landscape is really interesting. Hello, little dog. Have you come to say hello and breathe into the microphone? Where was I before we were rudely interrupted by dog? Right, so yes, world building. I think it's a really interesting world building concept. I think for me it is a little bit too wishy-washy. Now, I love a hard magic system. I love here are the rules, here is what you need to know, here is how magic works, here is how the magical elements of this world work even. This is not that. We very much meet these characters after the kind of, I guess, cataclysm kind of goes down, after this world of monsters has been created. So it does feel like you're not given much information as to how things work, you're just told that they do. And I think the big thing for me was I didn't really get the sense of why someone would still choose to be in this place. And I understand that there was an element of, you have to live here, you're being forced to live here, nobody's being allowed out of here. But it did seem sort of hopeless, and I think that was the thing that the book was really missing for me, was those pockets of light. And I've talked about that in reviews before. I like a lot of contrast between bad stuff is happening, good stuff is happening, chaotic things are happening, normal things are happening. I need more of that balance, and book 1 in particular I didn't feel had that. I think book 2 managed it better. Book 2, particularly the start of book 2, did manage to do it, so I know it can be done, but I would warn you, in book 1 it does feel a little bit imbalanced in that sense. It's a bit of a slog, bit of drudgery, but not in a boring sense, just in a miserable sense. So I think that combination of things feeling very miserable and you as a reader not having all the information, and you don't really ever get all that information. Some things are given to you, words for things are given to you, but in terms of if you're reading this book looking for, and then we met the mad professor who managed to set the world up in such a way, that doesn't happen. I personally don't really care for the romance in this book, not in the sense that I don't like it, not in the sense that I'm mad that it's there, but it is not my favourite thing in the book, and it's not what I focused on when I read the book. And I think that really bothered me the first time that I read the series, way back when, probably 2017, 2018. I didn't get on with it because I either wanted more out of the romance or for there to be no romance at all. As a person reading it now, I can see the kind of value to having that lighter, this romance isn't super important, but it is there, we're exploring these two characters feel. However, I don't particularly feel like these two characters had much romantic chemistry. So it's a double-edged sword, right? In some ways I appreciated that the romance wasn't super much the focus. I think I talked about it when I was talking about these in my weekly reading video, liking that the focus is on a relationship between two characters that has more than a romantic element to it. There's a platonic element to their relationship as well. However, overall, it wasn't 1000% my favourite, and it kind of, in hindsight, feels a bit like there shouldn't have been a romance at all, in my opinion. Not my favourite element to it. If you're really here for a YA romance, I don't think this will do it for you. If you don't like YA romance at all, it's also not going to do it for you. Middle of the road stuff. Lastly, I think this is a really small thing, and in some ways, I think if you didn't notice it, it probably wouldn't bother you, so maybe I'm ruining the book for you talking about it now. But I really felt like we didn't meet that many people in this series. There are definitely other characters to August and Kate, but they are typically antagonists or parents, and they don't feature too much. There's maybe 1 or 2 characters we get to know a little bit better, and I feel like if this book were being written now, it would be much more of an ensemble piece. So again, maybe that's because I wasn't totally on the connection between the two of them, and I just wanted it to be more characters. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting that, thinking about it now that I'm outside of reading the books, I don't feel like I met that many people in a city that has a lot of people in it, and that's interesting. Other things you might want to read, things that you might want to pick up if you liked this or if you're thinking about reading this. Obviously there's so much YA dystopian out there right now, you'll definitely find something that you like. I've read a bunch of it. I don't think anything comes to mind at the moment where I'm like, yes, this is definitely the YA dystopia that I recommend. I'm kind of out of that zone at the moment, but I do think in terms of like the cat and mouse elements of this series in various different ways, maybe something like The Tiger at Midnight by Swati Tadala I really enjoyed. That's my favourite YA cat and mouse kind of book. Those would be where I would maybe recommend things. If you're wanting more V.E. Schwab, I think I would go into her adult stuff and I would read the Vicious and Vengeful books, which I need to reread for this series. Thinking on it right now, that needs to go on my list, so maybe we'll talk about those in the future. Should you read these? I would say, if you are completionist V.E. Schwab stuff, they are worth reading. I think they are better than some of her earlier stuff. However, they are not my favourites of hers. They are still really good. I'm going to hang on to them. I would reread them again in the future, but they're not my absolute favourites. I think as a YA duology, they're pretty strong, and you know my feelings on YA duologies almost always. I just don't like the second book and it ruins the whole thing for me. In this case, I did enjoy them. I think it would entirely come down on how you're feeling about YA, dystopian, romances that aren't entirely romance-filled kind of things in that moment in time. I would say these are very mood-ready books. Pick it up. Give it a go. If you're not feeling it, put it down again. That's where I'm landing on it. I think I would mood read them. I wouldn't necessarily read them because I think they are the best things in the world. Have you read these? Do you have plans to? Let me know down in the comments below while you're down there commenting. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also follow me on social media. Come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams and more. If you'd like to find out more and join their number, that's down in the description below as well. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another... But I think in terms of the atmosphere generally, I think the reasons I wouldn't necessarily recommend this book over another V. Schwab or another YA book of this kind is mostly to do with... What are you doing? Luna. That's my ukulele.